Good afternoon and welcome to the August 18th, 2022 meeting of the Humboldt County Association of Governments Board. The Humboldt County Association of Government meetings will be held at Eureka City Council chambers, conducted both in person and telephonically through Zoom. The phone numbers and Zoom link are available on the HCOG website. And at this time, we will call this meeting to order. And can we get a roll call?
Supervisor Wilson?
Present.
Mayor Jones?
Here.
Mayor Seaman? Councilmember Smith? Mayor Atkins Salazar? Councilmember Gordon Johnson?
Here.
Councilmember Jack West? Councilmember Mike Johnson?
Here.
Pac Member Arroyo?
Here.
Pac Member Allstrand? Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we'll adjourn as the HCOG board and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. And our first item of business today are some presentations. The first being we reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee, and the first item of business is the presentations. First one being Highway 101 Eureka Arcata Corridor Project with Caltrans Project Manager Jeff Pimentel.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me all right?
Just fine.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. So I just wanted to give you guys all a quick update on the Indianola Undercrossing project. So I think the last time I attended, we did successfully repackage the project after last year rejecting the bids and furnishing design for the column-supported embankment portion of the project. Happy to report that the project began advertisement on August 15th. So we are 3 days into the advertisement period. I believe we're running a 7-week ad period, so bids will open on October 4th. We were able to, the engineer's estimate ended up being within our threshold to not request supplemental funds at this time, so that was good, and we'll kind of test the bidding environment and see what comes of that. So on October 4th, I think we'll all be very interested to see the outcome of the bids. So we have not received any bidder inquiries or any communication with any bidders to date yet, but I imagine that contractors are starting to dig into the package and review it. So that's really all I have to report now. I don't expect I'll be having much of an update next month, as we will not have had bid openings yet, but as soon as bid opening occurs, I'm sure Beth and I will be communicating, and she'll be providing any updates to the board as necessary, and I plan to have more information likely for the October board meeting. I can answer any questions about that, but Tasha also informed me that during the last meeting, there was some questions on our Broadway pop-up demonstration that will be occurring on Broadway in Eureka with some of the kind of temporary complete streets improvements we're planning to make. And I wasn't around to answer those questions as I had already exited the meeting. So I'm also available to answer any questions the board might have on that.
All right. Well, thank you. It's exciting to hear that it's out and advertised, and we'll see what happens with the bids and whether they stay within parameters. Anybody? Yes.
Thank you,
Councilmember
Chair Johnson. Jeff, I have three questions. Number one, the engineer's estimate. Number two, the construction allotment. And number three, the working days specified. My mic's on.
Jeff, you're muted.
There we go. Thanks. So when we do our estimate, we have kind of three components. One is the bid items, then we have supplemental work, and then we also have state furnished materials. So the overall total estimate of the project, and I need to be, I think I need to be a little sensitive in terms of numbers I speak to, because the project is actively being advertised now, and I obviously don't want to jeopardize the bidding environment with information I give out in a public forum, and that route to give any advantage to any contractors. But I believe listed on the, and this is public, so simply by going to the advertised page for Caltrans, all projects currently advertised under this EA, just looking it up now, our estimate is right at about 50 million for the bid items that contractors will be bidding on, minus supplemental work, state furnished, as well as contingency funds that go into that. Our original allocation for the project was just shy of 50 million. So our estimate is a little higher at this time, which is to be expected, considering some of the economic forces and inflation and whatnot that have gone on since the last time we put this project out. But we're a little higher, not significantly higher than we were. So I'm hoping that answers your question this time. If you guys would like to have a offline conversation about it, I'm happy to do that with Beth, and Beth has been included in those conversations as well. I just don't want to lean on the side of providing information in a public format that I'm not able to.
Also, the working days, Jeff?
Working days, I don't have the actual just working day estimate in front of me, but we are at 3 seasons. I believe that comes out to in the neighborhood of about 600 days. But we're at 3 seasons of construction.
Thank you.
Chair
And
Johnson.
Gordon, I can, if you want an actual number, I can follow up with that. I can definitely dig that number up pretty easily, but rather not hold everyone up here. So I can follow up with an email to Beth and provide that actual number to her, and she can forward that on to you if you'd like that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Mayor Jones.
Yes, thank you. Jeff, I think I asked a question at the last meeting concerning the bridge work done on 101, which is now completed. So that's really great. So now my next question concerns, if you know about the project, the overpass bridge project on 299 just east of Arcata near North Bank Road. Do you have any estimates as to when that's going to be completed?
I do not. Unfortunately, I am the project manager on most jobs in the Arcata Eureka area. Unfortunately, I'm not the PM on that particular project, and I don't have that information, but I am happy to chase that down and also send that information on to Beth for her to forward on to you.
Jeff, I actually prepared today thinking that might come up. So I did check in with the project manager, and the project just met 90% design on July 1st. And so it's still on target to begin construction next summer.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And thank you. Any other board members with questions? Or I don't see any hands raised. Everything clear, Debbie? Okay. Well, thank you, Jeff. And I have to say, it was exciting to see that mid-block crosswalk, the Hawk crosswalk on Broadway. And then it's going to go a ways for helping. So thank you.
Yeah, and we got a lot more complete streets projects and efforts and development ongoing now. So I think in the coming few years, we've got a lot of money that will be invested into those efforts on Broadway and the other highway, 4th, 5th Street and those. So a lot more coming and a lot more in development. So thanks for the comment. A
Well,
lot of good effort from the team went into putting that into action pretty quickly.
It did. It was like one day it wasn't, and the next day it was there. I know it took more than that, but it just seemed like. I know that those masks they're not totally self-supporting there. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, thank you for that. And our next item is the fiscal year 2020-21 TDA fiscal compliance audits with Mr. Keith Borges.
If I can, through the chair, just give a quick introduction before Keith gives his presentation. Keith will go into more details about the audit, but I did want to address that this year, as you read in the staff report, we did have an extremely late submittal. In fact, the latest submittal we've ever had, and that was largely caused by a hang up with the county auditor controller's office and not getting the information we needed to complete the audits. So we're definitely hoping that that resolves itself moving forward and we don't have that same issue, and looking forward to an improved relationship there. And now these audits have been submitted, and we did receive notice that they've been received, but they're still under review. We did receive that hold from the state auditor controller's office that we cannot release STA funds right at this time. So that's a big deal. That's $1.4 million this year that we can't get out to transit operators until the state clears it. So it just really brings home the importance of getting these audits done on time. And as I mentioned, we had sort of extenuating circumstances this year that we don't foresee happening again, luckily. But you may notice there's also an audit finding that we have had some issues in the past. We've never been quite this late, but we have had a couple of our member agencies and transit operators be late before. And it is our job as HCOG to make sure that they stay on time. It's a challenging role to be in because we don't control the information. So we have in our TDA guidelines that we can hold their money until the audits are complete. And we do that, but it hasn't always been the most effective. So we are going to explore some more proactive ways that we can help our member agencies stay on track to get these audits in on time. And so we'll be working towards that this year, and hopefully we won't be having the same conversation. So with that, I'll hand it over to Keith.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Beth. We have completed the cycle of audits for the year ended June 30, 2021. Most of them were in fact done back in March in advance of the March 31st statutory deadline. Just the last couple, HTA, City of Arcata, and HCOGs that were completed more recently in June. But as Beth noted, they've all been submitted to the state, so we're moving forward. This year, there was a little bit of some COVID-related relief provisions that were provided by the state for the transit operators in terms of their Farebox Ratio requirements and fund eligibility for certain program expenditures. So that was a positive aspect to things. Other than that, it was a fairly stable year for most of the claimants in terms of their participation in the program. They claimed their transit or street monies and spent them in an appropriate fashion. So as most of you know, the overall HCOG audit consists of individual claimant audits for the cities and the county, as well as audits of the two joint powers authorities, Humboldt Transit Authority and HCOG, as the regional transportation planning agency. The JPAs get full traditional governmental audits, just like the cities and counties get, full-blown set of financial statements and all the bells and whistles. HCOG's statement, of course, includes its operational activities where it carries out the programs and projects that it has control over and custody of funds. That would be, and in addition, it also includes the fiduciary duties and responsibilities that it undertakes for the TDA fund, that's the sales tax money, the state transit assistance money, state of good repair money, and regional surface transportation money. But their participation in those funds covers simply the allocation, apportionment, and distribution of the funds to the claimants. We then audit the expenditure of those funds at the claimant level. So at each audit, at each claimant level, we're going to do a financial audit to make sure that the funds were spent appropriately and presented properly in the fund, as well as the required compliance that relates to either transit or non-transit related uses of those funds. Each claimant gets their own report, and it includes a standard set of financial statements and special language that indicates the audit is only of the transportation or transit related fund for that entity. So a very narrow focus at the claimant level. We render an opinion on the financial statement or on the use of those funds, and we also document and note any non-compliance that may have been noted during the audit of the individual claimants. That gets reported in the notes to the statements, and then we include those in our end-of-year management letter to HCOG. For HCOG, again, I mentioned they get a full set of governmental financial statements, which are going to be more comparable to what I think you traditionally see for your own respective cities or county in terms of the look and the format. Much bigger, obviously a lot of set of governmental financial statements these days has a lot of requirements in terms of disclosures and information that has to be included. So again, I noted that covers the administrative side of things that HCOG has, and that's the receipt and expenditure of the TDA money that they get for administrative purposes, the state money through Caltrans for the ongoing planning and programming, as well as any grant monies that might be available. It also includes the PPM money that you get every year. Those are accounted for together in one administrative fund for reporting purposes. And then in addition, we also report the SAFE fund, the SAFE activities in its own separate fund. Those amounts are combined with the fiduciary funds that I mentioned earlier, and those kind of cover or represent the entire financial statement presentation and picture for HCOG. Like any governmental entity now in today's financial statement world, they have to present information in two different formats. One is known as a government-wide format, which is where you account for things on a full accrual basis and recognize liabilities of the organization, things like accrued vacation, sick leave, retirement benefits, things of that nature, fixed assets, long-term debt. So that's a required presentation. And then in addition, we present the financial statements in the traditional governmental accounting presentation. That's where you're more concerned with a current financial resources approach. You're kind of looking at what came in this year, what did we spend, and that's where your budget is based. It's based on the expected funding from your various sources and the expenditure of those funds for your projects and programs. The audit opinion this year on HCOG statements was unmodified, which means that they do fairly present the financial position of the organization in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The government-wide statement presentation, as I mentioned, that's where you're going to see the large GASB 68 retirement pension plan debt increased from the prior year, like I think most organizations. HCOG's liability went from $380,000 up to $430,000 for that fiscal year. The other significant liability, which is the post-employment benefit health insurance for retirees, that calculated liability went from $265,000 to $295,000, so it went up about $30,000. And again, most of those liability amounts are calculated based on actuarial assumptions and expected earnings and so on. They also do take into account payments that you have made against your unfunded liability, so to speak. HCOG has to make a required annual payment against that liability every year. From an operational income standpoint, the HCOG showed a surplus this year of about a little over $90,000, revenues in excess of expenditures. And that's pretty stable compared to the year before, which was about $95,000. So all in all, even with all the pandemic challenges, administratively, things were fairly comparable. cash, a good reserve of cash on hand at the end of June of 21, over $600,000 for HCOG's administrative accounts, and just a little over $1.5 million in the safe account. I mentioned the fiduciary activities. Again, those are part of the financial statements, and even though those funds aren't directly under the control of HCOG, they do run through the set of financial statements. And that's about $9 million in revenue that came through the sales tax account, the surface transportation program, and the various state transit programs. So you took in about $9 million, you dispersed about $7.5 million to the claimants. And there's always a little bit of a difference between the money coming in and the money going out, just due to the nature of when claims are submitted and how they get submitted. So it's not always an in and an out each year. And at the end of June of last year, there was a little over $6 million in essentially trust fund money that essentially belongs to most of the claimants, that is there for future drawdowns. The financial statements also include what's known as an MD&A section, Management's Discussion and Analysis. That's in the front of the audit statement, and that's where management kind of summarizes things kind of in a condensed format in terms of the operations during the year, and notes anything of nature that needs to be highlighted. We also, as I mentioned, have extensive footnotes that any governmental entity needs to include in their financial statements, mostly on the accounting methods and policies and practices that you have adopted, as well as detailed information on those retirement plan liabilities and health insurance liabilities going forward. Lots of mandated disclosures and schedules and charts that have to accompany the financial statements. So those are included there. After the financial statement, we've also prepared what's known as the management letter, and our management letter includes a couple different items. It includes a section which is known as a required communication to management, and it's a required communication that kind of addresses how the audit went in a general sense. You know, were there any difficulties that were encountered with management? Any disagreements over adjustments or proposed adjustments or financial statement presentation? You know, were there any problems in the conducting of the audit? And happy to say that there are no items identified in that letter. It did, you know, other than the timing aspect of things, it went quite well. And then the other part of the management letter is where we summarize any findings that have come up in the course of both this year's audit and prior audits. The typical findings that we have in our management letter are the fund eligibility finding and a Farebox Ratio compliance finding. Those are the most common ones for your agency. The fund eligibility really is in my view, it's a very routine finding. Fund eligibility is a calculation of how much money a transit provider can claim in TDA funds each year. It's based on their total operating costs, less their fares, less operating funds from other sources. Because there's a timing aspect involved, these entities are claiming money a year and a half in advance of when they actually spend it. There's always going to be a little bit of a disconnect between the amount of money they think they need and what they end up actually being eligible for. So when there is an excess, it's just a routine matter to apply that excess to a following year's claim. So again, even though it's noted as a finding, again, I look at it as just kind of a part of the process. All of the prior findings from prior audits have been addressed in claims filed by the various cities. For the current year, there was only one entity with a fund eligibility, and that was City of Fortuna, had a small finding for their senior bus program, $7,500, so that will essentially be rolled into a subsequent year's claim. For the Farebox Ratio, as I mentioned, normally all the entities here in our rural area have a 10% Farebox recovery ratio, meaning they're required to charge fares equal to 10% of their total operating costs. And all of the entities met that requirement, again, except for City of Fortuna for their bus program. They had not met it last year as well, but only by a very, very tiny amount. I think their ratio was like 9.7 or 8%. This year it was a little bit less, but obviously the pandemic had a major impact on a senior bus program. And the state, recognizing that, had provided this relaxing of the penalties associated with not meeting your Farebox ratio. So for the next 3 years, 21, 22, and 23, even though we still calculate the Farebox ratio and come up with a number, there's no consequence to not meeting the required 10% ratio, hopefully giving transit providers a chance to kind of get back on their feet and kind of get their programs back on track. Other findings that we've had in prior years, we had one for the city of Arcata with their Greyhound program and its ongoing deficit that it's generating or incurring each year. The deficits have been getting smaller based on changes they have been making internally and how costs are allocated. It still showed a deficit this year. Again, pandemic did not help that at all. But there still remains a cumulative deficit that HCOG and Arcata need to look at and kind of devise what their plan is going to be to combat that deficit and make it go away. Another finding that we had relative to the SAFE program was a suggestion that, or not a suggestion, but just it had been a long time since the SAFE program had really been looked at in depth. And just last October, a new SAFE strategic plan, as you know, was adopted by your board. And contracts have rolled out, and there will be some substantial enhancement of the call boxes out there, ADA enhancements, as well as some new call boxes being installed in underserved areas. So that looks pretty good going forward, and will probably also help use up some of that surplus that had been generated there. And let's see, I think lastly, the only thing, and I think Beth talked about it pretty well, was the timing of the audits. You know, they are statutorily supposed to be turned in by March 31st. The state can withhold TDA money if they don't show up. So we will, you know, wherever possible, you know, assist in ensuring hopefully that the next year in the future that deadline is met. In the meantime, of course, it does become a finding to be recognized, but I think we're all in agreement that we're all on board in trying to make sure that the next cycle is completed on a timely basis. So, and if you, I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have.
Does any of the board members have a question or comment? Don't see any hands up there. The only thing that came to mind when you were discussing the SAFE program was, is there a mechanism for capital improvements in that funding source, or
For which program?
the SAFE?
SAFE? Well, you can certainly use the SAFE funding for capital projects. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, to my knowledge, the SAFE program, you know, you can spend that money both on ongoing operational costs, call box maintenance, and so on, as well as construction and capital improvements.
Yes, and that is our plan. We'll be using that money to do the physical ADA improvements as well as install the new call boxes.
Yeah, the
That'll all
solar
come out of
and
the SAFE
cellular
fund.
Yeah,
and
yeah, the
satellite.
upgrades to the new what is it, 4G or 5G that we need to do, and then we'll have new satellite boxes, and so the installation and then the ongoing maintenance of those is all going to be covered entirely through this SAFE program, in addition to our staff time that we put into managing that program.
All right, well, I'm seeing no comments or questions. I thank you for your diligence in this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And with that, we come to public comment on non-agenda items and reserved for comments on matters which the PAC has jurisdictions but are not agendized. Do we have any? Oh, there's one. Yes. Come up here. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Latanya Jacob, and I just had a question about the project pertaining to the Farebox. I don't think this is on there specifically, but my question is in terms of the technology for the enhancements to the Farebox, and or my comments is if you use the debit cards or the computer or your phone, your phone. Wi-Fi, is that going to be an issue? Is that because I've seen a customer or a rider get on the bus and they try to use their phone, but apparently they said something about not having Wi-Fi. That was an issue. I don't think that should have been there. Something else going on there, but I just want to know if that's going to be addressed. And then the other issue I have is if you're going to use your debit card, the fees associated. When the cost is. Do people know what's it going to cost if they use the debit card, or do you have the option of using the debit card? Because there is a fee, I was told, looking at the bus cards. If there is a $1 fee, they say if you use a debit card or credit card for transaction. And I thought that was included in the cost of the card. That's just one thing. But in case of the fare boxes, if they use their debit card, will the people, when they get their statement, see on there a fee for $1 or whatever that fee is for using their debit card?
Well, as we can't discuss that because we don't know, but I would say, number one, talk to your bank, and number two would be up to each individual transit operator that you'd have to speak to those things about. Technology is a wonderful thing, but it's not available everywhere yet. So.
And lastly, it's about the, oh my gosh, my mind is going blank. Well, I'll put the rest in writing, but I thank you very much for taking my comment, and have a nice day.
Thank you. And if we have no more public comment, we'll move on to the consent calendar.
I have a, it's not really a public comment. We never made a motion to receive and file the last item. So I believe that is recommended by the staff, and so I make a motion that we receive and file the report, the year 2020-21 Transportation Development Act Fiscal Compliance Audits.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call?
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Gordon Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember West?
Yes.
Councilmember Mike Johnson?
Yes.
Pac Member Arroyo?
Yes.
Pac Member Allstrand?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
And thank you. At this time, we'll come to the consent calendar with six items. Assembly Bill 361 findings, approval of the meeting record from June 16th, 2022, approve the Fortuna fiscal year LTF claim, approve the City of Rio Dell fiscal year 22-23 LTF claim, consultant selection for the 5-year Transit Development Plan update, and consultant selection for the triennial performance audits fiscal years 1920, 2021, and 21-22. Does anybody wish to pull anything? Nope. Will you entertain a motion?
So moved. Can I move that?
Yes.
You're in the pack.
I am in the pack. I almost never make the motions here because I'm always a little unsure. Okay.
I will second the motion.
Have a motion and a second to accept the consent calendar. Can we get a roll call?
Supervisor Wilson?
C.
Mayor Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Gordon Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember West?
Yes.
Councilmember Mike Johnson?
Yes.
Pac Member Arroyo?
Yes.
And Pac Member Allstrand?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
And thank you. There are no action items, and at this time we'll reconvene as the HCOG board by motion and approve the PAC recommendations. So we'll entertain a motion to reconvene.
So moved.
Second.
Counselor Supervisor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Gordon Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember West,
Yes.
Councilmember Mike Johnson,
Yes.
Pac Member Arroyo, and Pac Member.
This is the board voting.
Oh, you're right.
I think.
Sorry. Thank you.
This is the part where I
Thank
don't
you.
do
Motion
it.
passes.
Thank you.
Okay. And now we will have the HCOG staff and PAC member reports, starting with the executive director's report.
All right. Well, this first item is really exciting because it is, I'm sure you've all read, but it is the Humboldt Transit Authority Award for $38.7 million for the Tercept grant, which will fund 11 new hydrogen fuel cell buses, replacing the entire RTS fleet with hydrogen buses. It also funds a hydrogen fueling station at the HTA maintenance yard, and they have what they call over the fence fueling with this station, which means that anybody else in our area that has a hydrogen vehicle or hydrogen fleet will be able to fuel there. It will be the northernmost hydrogen fueling station in California. So very exciting about that. The other piece of this is that it will fund a portion of what's being called the Earth Center, which is the intermodal center planned for the lot that's a parking lot now, and it's behind Lost Coast Brewery. There, with that intermodal center, it'll have housing on the top floors, which is being sponsored primarily by the city of Eureka and others. And the intermodal center will include basically be the transit hub for all the local routes, and looking at new express services to Cal Poly Humboldt. And then the other thing that's funded is also an express service from Eureka to Ukiah, and that will link up with getting you as far as the SMART train and connecting people further south. So it's really exciting. HCOG played a fairly small role in the grant application, so we're happy to support HTA in that. We also have a role in terms of helping roll out the grant. We'll be doing some grant administration, and we'll be doing some ridership marketing, that kind of thing. And so you'll see, future probably overall work program updates, amendments to include that work element and have us, assist HTA in this. But huge win for HTA and our whole region, and we're just so proud of them and happy to be, any small part of it. So that's really exciting. I did also want to just give a brief update on the SAFE project and where we're at with the call boxes. We are getting closer to get through our encroachment permit. We needed to hire an outside engineer to certify the ADA designs for the call boxes. We've gotten through that piece, and so we'll soon be turning in our encroachment permits, and then that will let us do the construction for the ADA upgrades. We've also been working closely with the Karuk tribe and Hupa tribe to select locations for the new call boxes on 96. And so we've been to their either to their full tribal councils or to advisory committees to their tribal councils to go over the locations we were looking at and get approval. We have that now. We also worked with representatives from the Bridgeville Community Center for locations on the 36. So we've got those all nailed down, and we'll be similarly submitting an encroachment permit for the new call boxes in those areas. So that's where we're at with that, but we will start drawing down that account very soon as the construction goes into effect, the most expensive part of the project. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that we continue to support I think it's the Greater Eureka Area Traffic Safety Task Force, and that was the task force that Mayor Seaman initiated, which you see all the go slow, watch the road signs all over. And that campaign, one of the steps we'll be doing is public service announcements, and it'll kind of take a theme similar to, if you remember those Keep Humboldt Healthy announcements, where different people are kind of, it kind of has the same wraparound slogan, but different people will kind of be giving their flavor of why they go slow or why they're mindful while they're driving. If you're interested in participating in that and having, your voice be featured on a public service announcement, please let me know and we'll get that set up because it's a great campaign. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Beth, Is there an estimated date when the first of those 7 buses may be rolled into the county? Mike's not on. Is there an estimated date when the first of the 7 buses might be rolling into the county?
I don't have an estimated date. They're still kind of getting through the, just kind of contracting for the grant and getting it awarded. I do think it's a 5-year grant cycle. So, I can come back with sort of which year we targeted that. I do think they need to get the fueling station operational before they can, bring the buses up. So that will be, I think, the order of operations. But I can report back on that next month.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments online? Don't see any. And now it's time for the Caltrans reports. If Tasha has any.
Yeah, hi, I do. I have a few updates. I'm going to start with Clean California, the dump days. We had very successful dump day in Blue Lake in July. We collected nearly 1,100 cubic yards of debris, which was amazing. There will be a Fortuna neighborhood cleanup in September. It's a pilot program to start to target an underserved community with high volumes of yard trash. And then there's more scheduled dump days for later in the year, including Willow Creek, Redway, Scotia, Rio Dell. And then we're also working with Hoopa Valley Tribe on a statewide pilot for a tribal project. As far as the beautification projects go, the Samoa Bridge murals are done, as well as the Manila Vance Parklet project. The Hoopa Downtown Beautification will be going out to bid really soon. The Berry Summit Restroom Picnic and Art project, that public engagement will be starting soon. There's the Orleans Downtown Enhancement Project, and the public engagement will kick off right after Berry Summit. And then the Eureka Utility Cabinet Art, we're partnering with the City of Eureka, and the work will happen ideally before the winter holiday and certainly by late spring. And then Adopt a Highway portion of the Clean California funding, $250 stipends are available to adopters, and we're asking people to contact us to sign up or to add a stipend to an existing adoption. Moving on to updates about fires and closures, the Lightning Complex fire, the Campbell and Amen fire, over 23,000 acres with 23% containment as of yesterday. State routes 299 and 96 are currently open, but may be impacted by fire behavior. And we're encouraging travelers to check Quick Map and also our District 1 social media pages for more information, including road closures, evacuation updates, evacuation centers, weather, and more. And then plus the Quick Map app just recently can now send drivers push notifications about nearby road closures and other traffic updates. So that's a new feature. Last, I wanted to just talk about the Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program. The 23-24 Planning Grant Program will be announced soon, probably releasing the draft grant guide next week. I just want to put it on everybody's radar as soon as possible because there'll be a one-time opportunity for climate change and adaptation planning funding, and that's $50 million. So I'm encouraging anyone who has the capacity to apply to do so. And the eligible applicants include RTPA cities, counties, and there'll also be a $5 million set aside for tribes with no local match requirement. So more information about that soon. And that's all I have, and if there's any questions.
Any questions?
And I appreciate those cleanup efforts. I just wanted to point out, we've had a lot of anxiety around the exits in Arcata, and I saw your folks out there today. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. With the new folks coming into town, a lot of anxiety in the town about, having your house clean when the guests come kind of situation. So I just want to thank you for getting to that.
I'll be sure to pass that along.
Well, thanks. Thank you for that. And seeing none, we'll move to Pac Member Reports if we have any. Yes.
I'll just touch on a couple of other highlights of the Tercept grant. So HTA is really thrilled to be able to receive the funding for this. And it's really a flagship project for this program. It's, of course, there's all kinds of other wonderful projects funded through that program, but this one was really innovative, and it was really forward-looking in its combination of housing and transit. And I wanted to note that there's also, Beth may have mentioned this, but if so, I missed it. There's also the southbound connection to Ukiah and the intercity route connection to bring riders through Mendocino County and onto the SMART train in the Bay Area. And that has been a gap in transit for a long time. You couldn't get from Soham to northern Mendocino. Central Mendocino, I guess. So there was this significant gap in the system, and this will help us address that. And then we also got the chance to visit with Congressman Huffman and tell him about our transit system locally and celebrate this grant. And it was really nice for our staff and many partners to really receive that appreciation and attention. So wanted to note that we also had that wonderful visit. And other transit updates, we're working on the $50 monthly pass continues to be available. We hope to continue to make that available to increase the simplicity of ridership and encourage ridership. And then we're working on tap-on, tap-off card readers so that people can more easily ride the bus, pay their fare, and not have to have too much complexity with it. So hoping that that will just continue to ease the feasibility of making that choice.
All right, well, thank you. And it's come to the end of the agenda. No more comments, questions. We will adjourn this meeting and look forward to seeing you all next month.